Chris Darwell, welcome to 7:30.
Very good to be with you.
According to all the polls, this race is extremely tight. At the same time, I see pollsters everywhere saying it could also lead to a decisive win for Trump or for Harris. How can both things be true?
Well, you've got 7 states worth a lot of electoral votes that are very close together. They're all bunched up there in the middle of the pack. We don't have one election for president. We have 51 elections for president. We can lock in the first 20 Democratic states. We can lock in the first 20 Republican states. Now what about the rest? And they all exist in the same bandwidth of about the same partisanship, which is to say, they're just a little more Republican than the nation as a whole. And then they exist in an order from Nevada and Michigan, which are the most Democratic of the 7, down to Arizona and Georgia and North Carolina, which are the most Republican. Then in the middle of the middle of the middle are Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. If the polls say that these races are basically tied or 1 point one way or the other, if the polls have missed by 2 points, guess what? Those will all tip over in the same direction.
So I hear Republicans saying they're confident because Donald Trump, they've got the numbers wrong on Donald Trump before. Are they right to assert that?
Well, I mean, what are they supposed to say? That's what they get paid to say. And if they're right, they'll look like heroes to their people. And if they're wrong, their people will quickly forgive them and excuse them for their error, and it will never be brought up again. But I have to say, in this election, the polls have not been this close since 2012. So it's been a dozen years since we've seen a race that looked this close. So there are people who are likely voters who don't know who they're going to vote for.
Even now?
Well, so it's interesting. So if we take the first half of the electorate, so in 2020, about 2/3 of eligible Americans voted. So out of those folks, you can take 36 million Democrats, 33 million Republicans. You could bank them today. You could have 2 months ago said, all of these people are Republicans, all of these people are Democrats, and they're going to vote. Then we get into the next 18 or 19 million. Who are these people? Some of them are the people you described, genuinely undecided between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, which to me is insane, right? If you're a lower propensity, lower information voter, and you want to vote because you feel a civic obligation and you think you ought to do it, and you say, but I don't know what I'm going to do. So those are the persuadable voters. And then there's the last slice. And the last slice is, I know who I won't vote for, but I'm not sure if I can vote for the other person, right? And now the last phase of the campaign is saying to these people, but what I need you to do is vote for me.
And just briefly on that, so the expected big red wave in the midterms that didn't happen was because of turnout, was because of what you're talking about?
So the midterm electorate is about 1/3 smaller than the quadrennial presidential electorate. And here's where the parties are really messing us up. So we're going through a party realignment. And the Republicans used to be the smaller party with more bounce for the ounce. The voters voted at a higher frequency because their coalition was what? It was older, it was more affluent, and it was better educated. What's happening now? Democrats have become, or are in the state of becoming, the party of the college educated, the party of the upwardly mobile, the party of the affluent, those folks. So the Whole Foods community are Democrats. So those two constituencies, Democrats used to be the working class party, and there's a problem that comes with that. You have more people, but it's harder to get them to go vote because there is an iron correlation between education and income and voter propensity. How likely are you to vote is highly correlated to age most of all, but after that, education and income. Rich, educated, older people vote a lot more than poor, undereducated young people. Our electorate is more female than male, about 53% female. And of course, white voters are still 70% or so of the electorate overall. So white women drive the bus when it comes to American elections. And while everybody's fighting over these small numbers of low propensity voters, the Harris campaign believes that if they can nudge the numbers with white women just 2 points, they'll turn the whole ship.
So that takes us to the poll from Iowa that caused a great deal of squawking.
Yes.
But buried inside the Iowa poll numbers were what looked like a large number of older women. So is that Iowa poll an outlier, or is it telling us something?
Well, we will know in a day. We'll get to know. I don't think that Donald Trump is going to lose Iowa. What I found interesting about that poll, other than just the women, was it showed 9 points undecided or other. What that looks like to me is a flinch at the end. So this is an election about, as I say, who can you stomach? Who can you bear, right? What Trump and the Republicans have to be concerned about is, so Harris couldn't quite get there, right? She had a good time reuniting Democrats, bringing them together. We saw her numbers go up 4 or 5 points. It was a convention bounce come early. And then she stalled, and she couldn't get to the next part. And as Trump dragged in the last Republicans and got that last point and a half that he was going to get the race essentially into a tie, and he did that, the conversation was a lot more about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden than it was about Donald Trump. In the closing 2 weeks of the campaign, the conversation has been a lot more about Donald Trump. And if there's going to be a flinch, and I don't know that there will be, but if Donald Trump loses the election, we'll look back on the Madison Square Garden rally, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about taking fluoride out of the water, Donald Trump saying that it would be fine with him if the press was killed by an assassin, and all of the Trump stuff. We will look back and say, oh, faced with an unappetizing choice, voters flinched away from the one that was in the news at the end.
Can you succeed without a polished ground game? Obviously, everyone is a bit down on their 2020 game because it was COVID and there was a lot less door knocking. But can a campaign succeed without that highly polished ground game?
Sure. I mean, Donald Trump is he's like performance art, right? And people talked about Kamala Harris being the vibes candidate. That is not true. Donald Trump is the vibes candidate. His net worth is indexed to his feeling about his brand value on a day-to-day basis. He's about vibes. And that's why they're so angry when they hear polls that say that they're down. That's why they got so upset about the Iowa poll. They get really upset about those things because the narrative that Trump wants to create, and the reason that they go to California and campaign in places like New Mexico that they're just not going to win, is it's about creating the vibe. It's about creating the image and sweeping people along with it. The problem for Trump this time, these Democrats are just mad as hell. They are just mad as hell at Donald Trump, and they are angry about abortion, and they are angry about the situation, and they would eat a glass Coke bottle to go vote.
We're sitting here having this conversation as if it's just another election, but of course you were famously part of the early forecast by Fox News giving Arizona to Joe Biden and stopping Donald Trump's narrative on the night that he was sweeping the race. Are you seeing the same? We are seeing the same signs from the Trump campaign that they will resist a Kamala Harris successful result. They're already fighting it in some places. How is it going to work out this time? What are you anticipating?
Well, the human beings typically do not make the same mistakes twice. They make new and interesting mistakes. I don't know what mistakes people are going to make this time around, but we're not going to have another January 6th, right? But we could have violence on the state level. My heart is with very much elections workers across the country who in those battleground states may face very angry people, may face backlash. It's going to be tough. But here's the other thing. When Donald Trump in 2020 was saying, well, I mean, to be fair, Donald Trump claimed fraud in an election he won. Now that is something not everybody can say, but in 2016, Donald Trump won the presidency and still claimed massive fraud. That was a new one. That was different. So in 2020, as the ramp up was coming in, Donald Trump was claiming fraud, claiming fraud, claiming fraud. Normal Republicans said, okay, well, let him go, let him talk, right? Just let him talk. It's easier than trying to contradict him. It took the riot of January 6th to get normal Republicans to say, oh my gosh, this has gone too far.
Only for a little while.
Well, see, here's the thing. People don't like to do hard things. They really don't like doing hard things. And Republicans, in the aftermath of January 6th, believed, well, we're done with this guy, so why should we further antagonize his voters by convicting him of something that he did in front of the whole country? He did live on television, and people saw the riot live on television. And we had a Congress, of all of the problems that the United States has politically, 8 out of 10 I can trace back to a Congress that won't do its job and won't exert itself against the executive branch. And in the hollowness of our Congress, when the executive sends a mob to smash in your windows and defecate in the House Speaker's wastebasket, when that happens, if you cannot summon the self-protective impulse to say, absolutely not, absolutely not. It has derelicted its work because they prefer to get reelected. How do you get reelected? You say, I'm with the boss. I'm with the boss. I'm on the team. I'm playing on the team. So yeah, I'll sign on to an amicus brief that says we're challenging Pennsylvania's results. Yeah, I'll do this, knowing that it was fake and that it would never work, and they could say to their primary voters,
I did this.
I tried. It just those meanies at the Supreme Court wouldn't let it happen.
But where are they now?
Well, that's what we're getting ready to find out. What we're getting ready to find out is, are the people who played along with Donald Trump in hopes that this would just all go away and that by now he'd be, be doing infomercials and out of politics or in prison or something else, will those people play along in the same way? If Donald Trump wins this election, it will be a time of extraordinary testing for his party as they try to manage him. On the other hand, if Donald Trump loses this election, it will be an immediate and defining test for the Republican Party. If they cannot summon the courage to do what they eventually did last time and certify the election results and say all these things, if they can't find the courage to do it again, not only have they sort of eliminated themselves as a credible party, but we're now playing with live ammunition. I think in 2020 and 2021, Americans did not take seriously the possibility that we could lose our republic, right? Did not think this was really a thing that could happen. I think what we have seen and learned since then, no one can pretend to be surprised that the stakes are very high. And I hope that because the stakes are very high, decent people of goodwill in both parties will say that the constitutional order has to be preserved.
We will see.
That's why they play the game.
Chris Stirewalt, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.